Morning, welcome to the forum. My name is Alex Westerfelt. I want to mention that KKFI has been a great supporter of the forum, and we want to take a moment this morning to express our sympathy as the staff and volunteers there mourn the loss of Lisa Lopez Galvin, who was fatally shot at the Kansas City Chiefs rally on Wednesday. She was host of the program Taste of Tejano, and that follows the Tuesday evening broadcast of the forum. So if we could pause for just a moment to hold Lisa's family and the KKFI community in our hearts. Thank you. This is the 80th year for the forum. It's been operating since 1943 to provide a platform for the discussion of significant issues in the contemporary world. You know the drill. Our speaker this morning will present for about 35 minutes. Then we pause, take up a collection, and we begin the Q&A period for about 25 minutes. The program is live streamed on YouTube, where viewers may post their questions in the chat, and we'll monitor those questions and ask them for you on your behalf. For those of you in the audience, if you would please silence your cell phones if you haven't already. I think about today's presentation on Wikipedia as giving us a peek behind the curtain. And our speaker is Dr. Spencer Graves, and I want to take a little more time than usual on the speaker introduction because too often a prophet is without honor in his own country. So let's see. Dr. Graves has a BS in aerospace engineering, an MS in industrial engineering, an MA in mathematics, and a PhD in mathematical statistics. And he holds 3 patents. And I won't embarrass myself by trying to describe what those 3 patents are. He's the author of 2 books. One of them is in Spanish, and numerous peer-reviewed articles in the fields of engineering, economics, quality management, and molecular biology. He has authored more than 35,000 entries into the Wikimedia collection. Now that, as you'll find out from him, is different from Wikipedia, which I learned from him, in which he said, well, I've only done 8,000 so entries into Wikipedia. He currently serves as the Secretary of Peaceworks Kansas City. He's the president of Friends of Community Media. He's produced some public service announcements in both English and Spanish that encourage people to register and vote. He has 2 focuses at present: the impact of media on democracy, economic development, and virtually everything, everywhere, all at once, including the risk of nuclear Armageddon. His second focus is activism to improve the quality of local journalism to counter the increasing polarization of the body politic in the US and worldwide. So I asked Spencer recently, what drives you? What is it that you want to accomplish? And when I tell you his answer, you may be tempted to smirk. So I encourage you to think before you react. Without a moment's hesitation, Spencer said, my goal is the dismantling of the military-industrial complex. Military-industrial media complex. Thank you. So when he said that, my mind went off in 2 directions. The first one was, what is my driving force in life, especially comparatively? And two, he just stated a rather lofty goal without hubris, without a hint of hubris. So I've spent enough time with Spencer now to know that his accomplishments, his credentials are no match for his humility. Spencer served 6 years in the U.S. Air Force during the U.S. War in Vietnam. And he said, I quote, "I had been on active duty for 3 months when it came to me that the South Vietnamese should have a home team advantage. Why did they need foreign troops when their enemies did not? My meditations on that question helped turn me into a compulsive fact checker. Who better to be our Wikipedia guide?" Spencer. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you very much. So I claim that Wikipedia is the most democratic force on earth. And before I go into this, um, Alex encouraged me to request a show of hands. How many here think that Wikipedia is not credible? How many think that Wikipedia is more credible than most other sources? How many think that Wikipedia's credibility is somewhere in between? How many would not raise your hand no matter what I ask? So, what is Wikipedia? Wikipedia is a free, open source, online encyclopedia maintained by volunteers all over the world who make, on average, 2 edits every second. There are currently 326 different language Wikipedias, including in Cantonese and other Chinese dialects separate from the primary Chinese language Wikipedia. The English Wikipedia includes almost 7 million articles, and roughly 500 are added or new articles are added each day. Last year, over 800,000 registered users made at least one edit. And I don't know how many edits were made by unregistered users, but I've read that it's comparable to the numbers that are made by the registered users. Other registered users are, quote, watching Wikipedia articles without making edits. And there's a value of doing that because it can help you stay current and learn more things, new things about events and issues of interest to you. And uh, um, because somebody else is posting something new that they've discovered or changing something, and I constantly learn new things from Wikipedia articles I'm watching. Wikipedia is a project of the Wikimedia Foundation, which is an international nonprofit that maintains the MediaWiki software that drives Wikipedia. They also they do not pay anyone. The Wikimedia Foundation does not pay anyone to edit Wikipedia. They do organize conferences, um, and they lobby. Um, for example, the European Parliament to influence legislation that could seriously impact the quality of Wikipedia in Europe and elsewhere. The popularity and credibility of Wikipedia has created an industry of professional editors who are paid to burnish the images of their clients and occasionally degrade the quality of Wikipedia articles that their clients do not like. For the most part, however, the volunteers are still winning. I have logged, as I mentioned, over 30,000 edits in Wikipedia and other Wikimedia Foundation projects since 2010. I have also attended several conferences organized by the Wikimedia Foundation and presented at some of those. Almost anyone can change almost anything on Wikipedia. What stays tends to be written from a neutral point of view, citing credible sources. So I receive several emails a day notifying me of changes in Wikipedia articles that I am watching. Um, One that I got a few days ago, this is stamped January 31st. I picked it because it notified me that Wikipedia page All Souls Unitarian Church has been changed by an anonymous user and gave the IP address. It gives me the URL, the Wikipedia, the internet address for that article, which for the current revision, which I never click on. Instead, it offers me two other options. To view this change, I can click on a certain link. And to view all changes since my last edit, I can view I can click on a second link. And I usually click on those two other links, and I will get, for example, in this from this case, there are two columns in the comparison of changes. The first one gives what it was, and the second one gives the new version. In this case, this was a test edit I had made myself as an anonymous editor, uh, and there is a there are a couple of blank spaces highlighted in light blue, showing blank spaces that I had added at the end of a sentence as a test edit to make sure that I knew what I was talking about, right? Uh, and there's up here there's a button that says undo. If I didn't like that, I could click that undo button and undo that change. And not uncommonly. So here's another one. I was watching the Wikipedia article on inflation, and the second link said that there was three intermediate revisions by two users that are not shown. No difference. So between the time that the person who made an edit um, generated an email to me, and the time I actually got to looking at the email, someone else had just deleted those changes, right? So, and who knows that I could find out what the changes were, but I'm not going to take the time to talk about that right now. Okay, so um, let me talk a bit more about uh, uh, take a particular example, the Wikipedia article on the Israel-Hamas war. And I want to show you a few things about this. First of all, the article starts by saying this article is about the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. For the broader context, the blah, 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 and gives links to three other Wikipedia articles that you might be interested in. And so you can go to those before or after you read the current um, article. What am I doing here? Um, so here we go. So there's another thing here. Down here it says, again, so it starts out by talking about an armed conflict between Israel and Hamas-led Palestinian military groups has been taking place since, et cetera, since 7 October. And you go on, and there's a there's footnote number 77. All right. And if I go to the end of the page, I find out that there are 979 different uh, notes, different references at the end at the end of this article. Okay. Um, that's kind of a lot. If I go back to the top of the article, there's an option to view history. So if I view history, I can see this screenshot. I've got a screenshot that I'm showing in the of whatever that has the first three of actually 50 different, the most recent 50 different edits and each one I could undo if I for some reason wanted to. There is an option up here to look at page statistics. So if I look at page statistics, I find out that the first edit was sorry, the first edit was 2023-10-07. That's October 7th of last year at 6:22 a.m. Um, Greenwich Mean Time. Uh, Total edits over 12,000 by over 1,000 different editors. So what have we got here? We've got an article that was written by an international collaboration of over 1,000 people, um, making over 12,000 edits, citing just under 1,000 different with 1,000 different notes at the end of the article. Uh, okay. Um, what else? There are page views. And if I click on that, it shows me a plot of the number of views each day for the past 20 days, over 700,000 views, averaging what, over 33,000 views each day for the past 20 days. Um, so let me, if I click on, let me go back to the article. Yeah, so there's a little blue padlock with a symbol with the letter E in the upper right. That says that this article is extended protected. That means that uh, this article is different from most Wikipedia articles. Most Wikipedia articles, almost anybody can edit almost any Wikipedia article, but this is an exception because why? Because it's so contentious, such a contentious issue. They just had to filter out the people who were anonymous editors, and so you have to have had a Wikipedia account for 30 days and made over 500 edits in other Wikipedia articles and Wikipedia articles that are not protected like that, right? In order to be allowed to edit this um, this thing. Um, so again, for the most part, the Wikipedia editors fight fair. All right. Wikipedia asks everyone to write from a neutral point of view, citing credible sources, and treating others with respect. Um, if you do not live by those rules, some volunteer Wikipedia administrator may terminate your account or even block your IP address. Relatively few articles are protected like this. Most articles can be edited by people without an account on Wikipedia, and most edits by anonymous editors are reasonable. Um, Edits that are not reasonable are easily reverted or edited in some other way. Let me pause at this moment and summarize what I have tried to communicate so far. Almost anyone can change almost anything on Wikipedia, and this Israel Hamas war article is an exception because it is such a contentious issue. And they've had vandals and trolls probably trying to disrupt it and get their own point of view there. And so a Wikipedia administrator had to put that padlock on there. Um, Wikipedia editors are asked to write from a neutral point of view, citing credible sources, and treating others with respect. Contributions that violate those rules easily get changed by other editors, and contributors who repeatedly violate those rules get blocked. Wikipedia is virtually unique as a place where people with very different perspectives collaborate to produce something that everyone can more or less live with. You do not have to believe a word you read on Wikipedia. If you question something, there is often a source that you can check. If I do not like some statement in Wikipedia, I often change the text to match the available references, or I delete the paragraph or something entirely. And I often post something on the associated talk page. Each Wikipedia article has an associated talk page where Wikipedia editors can post comments and questions and, okay, what do you think about this? Right? I've got this strange question and I can't answer it, or I don't like, or I just deleted this whole paragraph because of whatever reason. Um, Wikipedia, as a result, tends to be more credible and more current than any other single source I claim. In the past 2 years, I have published 2 articles in a refereed academic journal. In both of those articles, I cited many standard sources, um, and I also added some notes saying, see also a particular Wikipedia article. What does that do? Because somebody could change that article between the time between the time I wrote the citation and the time a viewer somebody wants to look at it. That turns out to be an advantage because I can go to that Wikipedia article and get information that was not available when I wrote the article, right? Um, are there false claims on Wikipedia? Certainly there are, but that is no different from any other source. In that regard, I'd like to mention the US led invasion of Iraq in 2003. I remember distinctly the year before listening to news and thinking that the George W. Bush administration was trying many different propaganda hooks to convince the US public that we should invade Iraq. Finally, began to get some traction by claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Um, and I remember hearing a media feeding frenzy about Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. I remember thinking that all the major media in the US, the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox, and others were all conspiring to stampede the US into invading Iraq on grounds that the senior executives of those news outlets should have known at the time were at best questionable and likely fraudulent. But how could those executives have done anything different? They make money selling changes in audience behavior to the people who give them money. That is their business model. If they do not have an audience, they have nothing to sell. If the audience does not change behaviors in ways that please the people who give them money, the money will go elsewhere. Les Moonves said as much early in the US presidential campaign of 2016. As CEO of CBS, he told an investors conference that the Donald Trump campaign may not be good for America, but it is damn good for CBS. The money is rolling in, and this is fun. So let me digress for a moment and ask um, how do we know anything? How can we evaluate the credibility of any claim? Let us begin by asking, how do most people evaluate the credibility of what they hear or see? Most people compare new information with their preconceptions. If it is consistent, it must be true. That rule is simple, it is quick, it is a fundamental part of human cognition because if I see marks in the dirt that looks like a paw print from a lion or a bear, my survival could depend on acting quickly to avoid becoming a big carnivore's next meal. However, in many cases, evaluating credibility this way can also be counterproductive. It can also be counterproductive. People die every day from all kinds of things where the risk could be dramatically reduced if more people push themselves um, more to look for information that could challenge their preconceptions on important issues. Around 1887, Friedrich Nietzsche said that facts do not exist, only interpretations. That may sound silly to some people, so I feel a need to expand on it. When we are born, our brains are a mass of neurons receiving signals from our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, with no ability to make sense of any of it. We hear noises but do not know how to interpret them. The brain of a normal newborn receives patterns of light and color, but cannot make sense of those either. Gradually, the neurons in our brain become sufficiently interconnected to allow us to identify physical objects, to stand up, walk, talk, and interact with our environment. The patterns of neuronal connections in our brains are more unique than a fingerprint and evolve over time. In 1922, Walter Lippmann, in his book on public opinion, observed that people live and act in the same world, but they think and feel and decide in different ones. We all think, feel, and decide in realities of our own individual construction. There is now a huge body of literature, of research documenting that everyone thinks they know more than they do. This is called the overconfidence effect, and there's a substantial and growing literature on that. It's a key result of a relatively new field called behavioral economics. Major results in that field began appearing in the 1970s, led especially by research psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman won the 2002 Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics, even though he is not an economist, he's a behavioral scientist. Tversky died in 1996 and so did not share in the Nobel Prize. How did the economics get into it? Because this is a new subfield in the intersection between between human psychology and economics. So a corollary to overconfidence is that people prefer information and sources consistent with preconception. This is called confirmation bias. All right. So how do most people ascertain truth? The research on confirmation bias quantifies the extent to which people ascertain truth by comparing it with their preconceptions. And this drives conflict. I have heard both Jews and Palestinians say to me, "You do not understand those people. They are crazy." I agree, but that does not make them any different from the rest of humanity. Okay? It would really be funny if it were not so tragic. People are killed every day because of differences between people's constructed realities. So, Alex kindly mentioned a little bit of my own personal background. I was raised on a farm in Cheyenne County, Kansas. A cousin once said there were only two Democrats in that entire county. Around age 8, listening to news on labor strike, I noted that I could not understand why anyone would want to support organized labor. I also noted that the news media were funded by advertising, which gave them the media conflict of interest. They could lose their advertising if they informed their audience if they suggested that organized labor might be actually be rational. Okay, a couple of years later, um, listening to the preacher in church, I heard him say that Jesus is such a beautiful name. No one has been named that since. I thought, number one, can that possibly be true? Number two, even if it is true, how could he possibly know? So, um, fast forward a dozen years. All right. I'm a second lieutenant, age 22, 3 months on active duty in the U.S. Air Force during the height of the Vietnam War. And it came to me that the South Vietnamese should have a home team advantage. And Alex mentioned that. I won't belabor that point further. Um, but I accept to say that I remembered from that I am one quarter German. And I almost certainly had distant cousins in my parents, grandparents, and great grandparents' generations who supported Hitler. I do not believe that I'm any smarter or more moral than they were. How could Hitler's supporters know the evil they were supporting? They were doing what the media they consumed told them was right and just and necessary. And that realization made a compulsive fact checker out of me. If I get two references that say conflicting things, if they both cite sources, I can go to those sources, and often I will find a way to interpret things to make them both right. Occasionally, I find one that's more credible than another. If neither reference cites sources, I do not know what to believe, and I often tend to avoid information and media that do not cite their sources. Um, so, um, so in any case, after looking for decades for information about a variety of things, I've concluded that we are all prisoners of the media that we find credible. How can we escape this destructive crowd? My answer starts by concluding that if I do not understand um, how I might do what I see my opponents doing, my actions could be making things worse, not better. To avoid that, I push myself to look for information and sources that might conflict with my preconceptions, uh, and help me understand the circumstances under which I might do what I see um, my opponents doing. And indeed, there's an article on the reliability of Wikipedia. I won't go into it in detail, except to note that they say that Wikipedia is virtually unique as a place where people with different perspectives collaborate to produce something that everyone can more or less agree with. And they cite academic studies that note that Wikipedia articles are comparable to survey articles and refereed academic journals, and the more editors they have, the better the article tends to be. So, but you need to be careful of images in Wikipedia. Um, do not believe if somebody sends you a screenshot of a Wikipedia article, do not believe it. It is easy to change a Wikipedia article, take a screenshot, and then circulate that screenshot because and it could be a few seconds later someone else reverts that change, but you do not know that if you're looking at only a screenshot. Um, so there's also a Wikipedia article on the censorship of Wikipedia. Many countries have blocked Wikipedia for various things. France ordered a Wikipedia administrator to delete a certain article. He did, and the Wikimedia Foundation wrote to the French government asking why, noting that the article had been compiled from published sources. When no answer came, the French language Wikipedia administrator in Switzerland restored that article. So, how can we use Wikipedia to improve the functioning of our democracy? Number one, the research says that most experts can be beaten by simple real rules of thumb developed by intelligent lay people. This research in this area dates back to the 1950s. To be precise, Kahneman and Klein in 2009 documented that expert intuition is learned from frequent, rapid, high quality feedback. Not very many fields have frequent, rapid, high quality feedback. In particular, political and military leaders and national security experts have expert intuition on how to please the people who control most of the money for the media. However, they do not know anything about how to. They know very little about how to build broadly shared peace and prosperity for the long term, and they're not selected for that. Indeed, in armed conflicts, even the winners often lose more than they gain. Um, and you know, the the political and military leaders and national security experts are selected for their ability to promote the special interest, often against the general interest of the public at large. So this is actually great news in this, and you do not have to be an expert at anything to make valuable contributions to Wikipedia and advanced democracy by doing so. You only have to be willing to research topics that interest you and look at how those topics are covered on Wikipedia. When you find gaps, you can help fill those gaps. There's a Wikipedia article. There should be a Wikipedia article on Roger Golubsky and on the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. There are not. There is a Wikipedia article on the city of Kansas City, which has a section on the Kansas City, Kansas Police that mentions Roger Golubsky because I put it there. Okay. There's a Wikipedia article on the killing of John Albers. Um, which I created last September after the Overland Park Police Chief Donchis resigned. Albers was a 17-year-old white male with a friend who called police in 2018 to say that he was concerned that his friend might be suicidal. An Overland Park police officer saved Albers from committing suicide, prevented him from committing suicide by killing him. I believe that the Kansas City metro area would be safer and more prosperous if more people spent more time appropriately documenting in Wikipedia abuses of power by law enforcement and reasonable and questionable actions or inactions by government officials more generally. Alex?
Thank you, Spencer. We pause briefly, take up a collection to help offset the costs of staff and technology to bring this program each week. Just a reminder, it is broadcast 9 days later on KKFI. That's Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Again, we thank KKFI for their support. Very quickly, next week's presentation is titled Lessons from an Organization Supporting French Media. It will be presented by Romarie Daval, Secretary General of Un Bout de Media, A Purpose for the Media. It's a citizens group campaigning for media independence. They lobby for changes in law to give journalists greater control over editorial policy. They also raise funds for investigative journalism organizations. So we're going to turn now to the question and answer portion of the morning. There's a slight addition. When I had dinner recently with Spencer, someone asked me later how the dinner went. And I said, well, we spent a lot of time in the weeds. And then I amended that later to say, no, we spent a lot of time in the jungle with machetes, and Spencer was 500 yards ahead of me, and I was trying to keep up with my machete because his mind travels so quickly over so much territory. So he and I have agreed that if when he's answering a question, he's kind of getting too much into the weeds or too much off track, I will give him a signal. Um, so we all know that in advance. So if you will, line up the side. Remember the guidelines. So these are questions, not commentary. Speak clearly into the microphone so that people hearing the broadcast and the live stream can pick that up.
Thank you, Spencer. That was very interesting. Uh, the underlying theme that I heard is that a lot of what we are told by media and other sources is influenced by somebody in authority getting more money. In other words, influenced by greed. And my question is there a Wikipedia article on why humans are so greedy?
There are lots of Wikipedia articles on all kinds of things. And, there's almost 7 million Wikipedia English language Wikipedia articles. Um, and I couldn't pull off the top of my head a specific uh, article, but I'm sure there's plenty. We can go look for look for look just for greed in Wikipedia.
Why are humans so greedy?
Okay. Well, there's an Wikipedia article on greed, all right, and if we go there, they can look at the table of contents. There are natures of greed, views of greed, inspiration, genetics, art, and popular culture, so forth. So I'm sure that in the genetics and the other things,
Genetics. I'll check genetics.
yeah, right. There you go.
So earlier you talked about you create an entry. Somebody comes in and they can edit that entry. You can look at it, and let's say it's a somewhat contentious issue, but it hasn't been given the big E yet. So you don't like their edit and you change it. They go back in, they change it again. Now the battle is going. How does that play out then?
That's a process called edit warring. Okay, and uh, and the way it plays out is is that people who are doing that are required to post their comments on the talk page. And they talk about, exchange comments on what we can say, what we cannot say, what's relevant to this article, what's maybe interesting but not relevant to the current article, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And so, yeah, that's the way it plays out.
Would you agree that there is an increasing skepticism on the part of the public relating to the authenticity, if that's a word, of news sources? And if so, do you see this as a positive development, or is it more like the people saying, well, they're not listening to my side, they're listening to the other side?
I would say the bigger issue to me is the increase in political polarization. And that's been acknowledged by uh, I kn- I've read books by at least two different retired general officers from the U.S. military who are very concerned that Russia and others are using the internet to uh, degrade and to foment discontent and political polarization in the United States and around the world, to weaken the United States and its allies to benefit Russia. And there are things that can be done about that. I think citizen directed subsidies for local news nonprofits is one of the um, things that has been proposed to counter that. I've talked about that in previous presentations at the forum.
Um,
Yeah, I use Wikipedia almost daily. Not necessarily for articles or whatever, but to help educate some of the people I work with about the physics and chemistry, things that they're doing.
Hmm.
And the my first experience with this interaction of editing was many, many years ago. And the incinerator industry was posting all sorts of their propaganda on, well, like you said. And then I immediately edited it, which caught their attention, and they were just um, like you say, this warring was it started the battle to the point where it was going to consume my life. So how do you combat these warring ideas back and forth without it consuming all of your life, which almost appears that you are into the.
Yeah. No, you have to set limits. Wikipedia is not perfect, and sometimes and on a few articles, the trolls win. All right, but I think on the whole, that's not the case, and we need more volunteers. That's uh, but there are also procedures for um, elevating a discussion to a Wikipedia administrator and requesting intervention of a volunteer administrator to referee in in the um, in the particular issue. And sometimes the trolls win in those arguments too. But on the whole, I think the volunteers are winning.
Hi, Spencer.
Yes.
On the Israel Hamas page that you had, there was a notice a few inches down that said is being considered to be changed to Israel Gaza. How does that consider? And since you're a contributor to the article, are they asking you to vote on whether or not that wiki title can be changed? I mean, it's only a one word change, but it does impact our politics and perceptions.
Yes, right.
Israel Hamas.
Yeah. Okay. So here.
There you go.
Okay. So we can go under discussion. All right. And so this says, okay, so here's a discussion, and they've got several different positions and different Wikipedia volunteers post their comments. I oppose the change because of blah, blah, blah. Here's someone else supports the change because reliable sources are gradually shifting to the other name, blah, blah, blah. All right. Does that answer the question?
Yes. And how does it get resolved?
How does it get resolved? Consensus among the people who take time to contribute to that discussion.
There's two parts to this question. So when you and I talked previously about Wikipedia, you mentioned that a lot of congresspersons may use it to put their profiles online and their staff bolster them to the extent that those IP addresses, for the most part, have been blocked from congressional offices now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the second part of that is I had a more favorable view of Wikipedia before I talked to you or heard much of the stuff you had to say in the presentation. Because as you talk, and anybody can do this, and they have to bring in sources. And as we know, there are a lot of unreliable sources out there. So I guess my question is help me feel better about using Wikipedia.
Yeah. So if you've got two different sources that say conflicting things, well, first of all, there is actually a self-appointed committee of people who have explicitly deprecated certain sources like Breitbart and Russia Today, RT, so forth. If I want to cite those sources, there's a good chance that my reference will be deleted. Okay, but ignoring that, if if different sources say conflicting things, as I mentioned, people talk about it on the talk pages, and they resolve which one seems more credible. Um, uh, uh, and what can we really say about this that maybe acknowledges both positions? So it's worded in a way that helps people understand uh, all sides to the conflict.
So one of the things we talked about earlier as well was part of the requirement to be informed is to consider sources and look at sources. And probably 99% of people who use Wikipedia never bother to go down to those resource listings, but it is incumbent. And I remember at the university level, when I was teaching and Wikipedia first came onto the scene, it was considered unreliable. Students weren't allowed to use it as a source, and that's since changed. Now we have AI that has come onto the scene and is treated in the same way as Wikipedia initially. Do you have any comments about the relationship between those two, and then what you would predict would be the use of AI relative to this sort of information generating?
I'm not an expert on AI. I mean, I remember 25 years ago, I was doing research with some professors at the University of Wisconsin, and one of them talked to somebody else who's said that who was raving about artificial intelligence, and my friend said reaction was, "You prefer artificial intelligence to real intelligence." Uh, that's sorry, that's a digression, but uh, going forward, I think we can still there's still going to be a role for Wikipedia, and it's as long as we can recruit enough volunteers and that we'll be able to Wikipedia will be able to stay in front of that. Uh, um, the If we're lucky, the general public will become more skeptical of the information and sources they see. So and and then there'll be more questioning and more willing to use Wikipedia, right? So I don't know. But I'm guardedly optimistic.
Um, one of my songs on my song list is "The Boxer" by Simon and Garfunkel, and that there's a statement in there that a man believes what he wants to believe and disregards the rest. And this follows into my concern about Huxleyan values and how we use media and information to overwhelm the public so they don't know what to think. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Gets back to my um, two things. Number one, I think we need a citizen-directed subsidies for local news nonprofits. I think that the Robert McChesney, media scholar Robert McChesney, has claimed that the basically the U.S. owns its dominant position in the world political economy in part to the great diversity of local news sources in the early 19th century, subsidized by under the U.S. Postal Service Act of 1792, that the U.S. that the relatively new U.S. Uh, had at that time the most um, diverse adversarial press on the planet, uh, the most diverse independent news sources before or since anywhere in the world. Um, and so I'm talking about experiments to replicate that and to try to reduce the Israel-Hamas war, to improve the situation in Lebanon, the ongoing crisis in Somalia, Sudan, so forth. We can fund those things at experiments of that kind at a fraction of the of what money is being spent on war. And we also, but we also need to find other ways to communicate to the public that healthy habits advertising, right? There's some research on healthy habits advertising that indicates that it can be effective in promoting, hopefully, the kind of thing that we need to see to reduce conflict.
We do have 5 minutes left because we started 5 minutes late. So if anybody has any questions, please come up. I will note, Spencer wanted me to ask you in the audience, how many of you believe you can be more intelligent consumers of information in general and more intelligent consumer of Wikipedia in particular because of his presentation? Show of hands. Good. If you want to join a group that looks at how to edit Wikipedia and add some articles to Wikipedia, certainly let Spencer know. He's eager to support such efforts. Would you share the story that involves our own Joe Robertson?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that's a great. I mentioned the Wikipedia article on All Souls Unitarian Church in Wikipedia. Okay, here it is. All right, All Souls Unitarian Church is a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is one of the largest UU congregations in the world. All right, founded in 1922. Blah blah blah, and comes down here, and here's reference number 5. All right, by Joe Robertson. Okay. Yes, let's give Joe a big hand. All right. Okay. So when Alex and I were discussing this, that was a broken link. Okay. I messed about, went to the Wayback Machine, archive.org, and I searched for that URL and I found that article. So I fixed the broken link. And then I wrote to Joe and I said, "Are you the Joe Robertson who wrote that?" Because there are other Joe Robertsons. Okay, there's I didn't mention the Wikimedia Foundation has several projects. Okay, one of them is Wikipedia. All right, Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. Another is Wikidata that makes it easy to distinguish between this Joe Robertson and other Joe Robertsons. All right. And so I asked him and he assured me he was the one who wrote that article. And so again, we've already given him a round of applause. Let's give him another one for contributing to UU history. And there's let's go on with this. Down here at the bottom of this page, all right, there is a list of Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist churches, okay, in Australia, in Canada, Ireland, Romania, the UK, in the United States, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. There's not one on this church. Okay. If people in this room or people you know want to collaborate to produce such an article, I'm happy to help.
I have a mug that I bought that I often have taken to meetings thinking I should give it to someone at that meeting, but then I always keep it and I have never done that. So you're another one that I could give it to, but everybody here could, and I'm going to read it. And I think this is a good reminder for all of us. It says, "Of course I talk to myself. Sometimes I need expert advice." And so I'm hanging on to this, and sometime I will manage to part with it, but I don't know when.
Okay, thanks, Spencer. We're going to continue discussion with Spencer in the library. We have a service that starts at 10:45. You're all encouraged to join that as well. Thank you for coming today.
Take a picture of your lunch.
Why don't you hold? Violence and murder and why that's not
Spencer should have this. Take a picture of them up.
And there's
Thank you. Take presentation.
Turn